A major recurring theme that we have seen throughout this class is that American society has a history of systemically barring ethnic minority groups from representing themselves in mass media. This lack of ability to tell their own story has unambiguously led to stereotypical portrayals, a large gap in representation, to use Hall's term, that can be devastating to these populations. In their book News for All the People, Gonzalez and Torres went so far as to write, "It is our contention that newspapers, radio, and television played a pivotal role in perpetuating racist views among the general population." And they proved this from the very first American newspaper. For our video project, we decided to take a closer look at this problem and its history by specifically focusing on the evolution of representations of Latinx people in film. We know disadvantaged ethnic groups such as the Latinx community are often portrayed stereotypically in film, and we have seen this narrative play out through many of our group presentations. From the unbreakable typecasts many Latinx actors and actresses face, such as the maid or drug dealer, to the inability to get certain roles because of accents or skin color, the examples are everywhere. One very interesting study called Social Identity Threat in Response to Stereotypic Film Portrayals looked into the effects of these negative stereotypes on Latinos. The most depressing of the conclusions was that viewing negative stereotypes of Latinx characters didn't just affect the way white Americans viewed Latinx people, but the authors concluded, quote, "In both studies, watching the highly negative, comedic, and unrealistic film clip elicited a more negative implicit association towards Latinos for Mexican American participants who had earlier said that their ethnic identity was an important aspect of self-definition. This shows that negative stereotypes portrayed in films is a huge problem and one that must be reversed for the Latinx community to stop being an oppressed minority group in America. We seem to be progressing as a society in this regard, which we will show starting in the 1960s. The first racist portrayal we will look at is the brown face acting of Bill Dana as Jose Jimenez in the early 1960s.
Now tell me, Jose, when you return from Mars, where will you be landing?
I am going to be landing in Nevada.
Ah, the state of Nevada.
The state of Nevada.
Well, then you obviously are convinced they're going to get you back to Earth.
I am convinced that they will get me back to Earth. Just how far into it? That's what I'm not convinced about.
But Jose, surely they must have provided something to break your fall.
Oh yes, the state of Nevada.
State of Nevada.
The clip that you just watched was one of Dana's most popular bits as Jose, and it shows the general idea of the show. When portraying Jose Jimenez, Dana acts intentionally stupid and lazy, among other stereotypes, totally misrepresenting actual Latinos. The show also makes fun of his English speaking and understanding of English, much like characters that we have looked at, such as Gloria in Modern Family. The popularity of this program rode the wave of popularity of blackface portrayals in minstrel shows, but was not as widely condemned by activism groups as its blackface counterparts. This show is a good example of stereotypical illustrations of Latinx people, and the positive result was that Chicano groups protested the show to such a degree that it was later taken off the air for being offensive. Sadly, just because blatant brown face acts became somewhat taboo doesn't mean that the Latinx community was able to tell their own story.
Like, okay, I am not going to play this as a bad guy. I am going to go in this as a human being who's in desperate, dire need.
Remo, what are you doing here?
What am I doing here? You know exactly what I'm doing here. I gave heart to this guy, and they had a lot of different cuts, things that I brought to the table that wasn't quite on the script. After I finished it, and I watched it on the show, they cut all that out. I want that baby!
The situation that Yancey Arias just described is a scenario that comes up often for actors and actresses of Latinx and other minority backgrounds. Even when society reaches a norm where Latinx actors can play Latinx roles, with white directors telling the story, stereotypes will still be portrayed regardless of the intent of the actor's goals. This represents a crucial problem as less than 15% of directors in Hollywood have minority background. Many actors think that they are doing their character justice like Arias, and many more actors and actresses, especially with minority backgrounds underrepresented in Hollywood, need to work regardless of their ideals or beliefs, because if they did roles free of stereotypes, they would not be able to make a living as an actor. The end result is that regardless of who is playing the characters, stereotypes will still dominate the film industry.
Robert Rodriguez, director of films such as El Mariachi and its follow-ups Desperado and Once Upon a Time in Mexico, creates films that defy expectations. In this interview, Rodriguez discusses some of the challenges that Latino filmmakers face in the industry.
Well, it's hard for a filmmaker, and it took me a while to realize why this is, why there even weren't more Latino filmmakers after something like El Mariachi took place. Because you don't really have a place to go show your stories. I mean, who's going to buy it? You know, there's not a big outlet like we're creating with El Rey. And we have a place like El Rey, it will help reinforce the idea which a lot of these filmmakers already felt. They almost rather not make a movie than make a movie that wasn't true to themselves, which is why you didn't see a lot of films coming from Latino filmmakers. Because when you go, they say write what you know. Well, what they know is Latino, and if no one's buying that, well then what if I gotta go make something else? It's too hard to make a movie. To go make something that's not even true to me, well, they're smart, don't go make it. But now we have a place. So you gotta stay true to your voice, you have to stay true to making something that you believe in. Otherwise it means nothing to anybody. You gotta make something that you believe in at least.
According to Charles Ramirez Berg and Jeremy Ricketts, the hero of the series is Mexican, and since any hero presents a locus for viewer identification and empathy, audiences worldwide have been exposed to a Mexican action hero arguably devoid of stereotypes. This is why it is essential to have not only Latino actors playing Latino characters, but also Latino writers and directors creating these parts. According to Ricketts, Rodriguez is the rare director of any ethnic background that also writes, produces, shoots, edits, and scores most of his own films in his home studio. It is this that makes the heroes of his film devoid of the typical stereotypes that permeate most portrayals of non-white characters throughout films and television. Stand and Deliver is another film that had more accurate portrayals of Latino leads by virtue of the movie's creatives being Latino themselves. It was written and directed by Ramon Menendez, who is Cuban. The lead, Edward James Olmos, is Hispanic and was nominated for Best Actor at both the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes for his portrayal of Jaime Escalante, a high school math teacher whose innovative techniques led to a much higher pass rate on the calculus AP exam.
There has been no proof of wrongdoing here, only a suspicion of cheating.
In this country, one is innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around.
If you're so confident of your students' abilities, why not encourage them to retest?
Why should I?
If they don't, everyone will assume they cheated.
Everyone will assume they cheated if they do.
Among a variety of other projects, Olmos also was an executive producer and an actor in the film Philly Brown. This movie, about a Latino artist pursuing a deal with a record label while also facing many challenges in her personal life, such as her mother's incarceration, was actually co-directed by Olmos' son Michael. According to LA Times writer Reed Johnson, the movie's subtext of continuities and conflicts between generations resonated with many of its predominantly Latino cast and crew, for whom Philly Brown itself forged a link between an older generation of Latino artists and an up-and-coming one. Latino actors, directors, and writers create roles that have more nuance and are less stereotyped than those that are created by white writers. As the presence of Latino individuals increases in the film industry, there is hope that Latino characters in cinema will be more accurate, a shift that will have far-reaching positive benefits that extend past the big screen.
Hypnosis, smoother than lotion, keep it in motion, get your mind open.